It has to make the operator more money or save the operator money. It has to make the crew or manager job easier, or it has to make the guest experience better. If it doesn't do one of those three things, it really doesn't qualify as good technology for the restaurants. And I've seen plenty of cool technology come in and just fall flat on its face.
Todd, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, Daniel.
It's an absolute pleasure to connect with you. We just got back from the 4th of July holiday, so we're all refreshed. As you can hear by my voice, I'm doing really well. But take us back for the folks that haven't heard of you and haven't seen the work that you've done. Give us a glimpse into your world. What have you been up to for the last couple of years within the restaurant world, and what are you currently super excited about?
I'm super excited about restaurant technology. That's really been my passion, and it comes from a lot of different places, right? I always tell people I started in the restaurant business when I was 2 years old. My first job really was McDonald's. I worked at 15 at a McDonald's restaurant in the town that I grew up. Went to college, got my degree in economics, and loved the business so much that I decided to stay with McDonald's and built myself a pretty nice career doing just about everything you possibly can in the restaurant industry. But technology started playing a really big part in restaurant operations during my career. And it's really gotten to the point where technology and operations are exactly the same thing. You can't have operations without technology. If you've ever been in a restaurant when technology is not working, it's not good. There's nothing happening, and there's a lot of people running around with their hair on fire, right? So, I have seen a lot of technology come and go. I tested a lot of technology for the McDonald's Corporation through some of my roles. I tested hardware and software, found a couple of bugs, but it was all in good fun and in the spirit of helping the corporation and help them develop their OTP program, which is an amazing self-support program and was part of some of their leadership councils and helped set the course for what the direction of that program really became. Ended up winning a couple of national awards for restaurant technology, OTP 3 of the Year in 2024, and a community award for all of my contributions to others who were in the technology field in 2016. And then PAR came calling, and I went to work for PAR Technologies, who actually helped develop the first POS system for McDonald's.
It's cool.
I think it was before 80. It might have been in the late 70s, early 80s, which, as you think about, restaurants used to have cash registers that sat on the front counter and people had to key things in. It was not until, late 80s, early 90s that they started taking credit cards. It was an all cash business, and drive-throughs were just the rage at that point, and they were only doing 50% of their business through drive-throughs. Now it's 70+% through drive-throughs. So technology changed a lot during that time. But I joined PAR in 2016 as the technical account manager for McDonald's, became the global account manager for McDonald's, which was my foray into sales and account management. Ended up taking on all of the hardware accounts for PAR and then moving into a senior director role for sales account management, had all of the software accounts reporting to me. So POS system, the back office system, loyalty, payments, and online ordering, which made me need to know a lot about the competitive space for the POS and all of those technologies. But it really just continued to fuel my passion for technology and what it can do for the restaurant and the need for good working technology in the restaurants, not just chasing the shiny object that's out there, but really looking at technology and knowing that it has to do one of three things for restaurants. It has to make the operator more money or save the operator money. It has to make the crew or manager job easier, or it has to make the guest experience better. If it doesn't do one of those three things, it really doesn't qualify as good technology for the restaurants. And I've seen plenty of cool technology come in and just fall flat on its face, which is interesting. And I have a passion to make sure that doesn't happen again. That crew people and managers and guests get good working technology in the restaurants. So my experience at PAR was great. I spent 8 years at PAR and then ended up joining a small AI company, which had a really cool AI product, which again, my fuel for technology in the restaurants and looking at what AI can do and how it's changed in just the past couple of years, I think we've just seen the tip of the iceberg as to what AI is going to do, not to replace people in the restaurants, but to help make them better at their jobs and to, in the long run, help them all really maximize their performance in very unique and easy ways so that the guests can have better experiences in the restaurants. So that was my long soliloquy, but
Super cool.
it's really that's what's fueling me right now. And now I'm consulting restaurants. I started my own consulting firm, Bridgepoint Ops, with really the mission to bridge the gap between restaurant technology providers and restaurant operations. There's really a disconnect between those who are coming in the market that want to sell technology into restaurants and those who are running restaurants. They speak different languages. They want different things, and helping them understand each other so that we can help get good technology into those restaurants in a reasonable time frame really is my focus in that.
Absolutely. I think the last point around the reasonable time frame is something that a lot of technology vendors that I've spoken to have actually either switched into a different industry or completely went out of business because it is so freaking hard and long to if you're building a new technology, to implement it effectively in the restaurant and then be able to then expand from there. So let's double tap on that. What do you think is unique around the restaurant industry that makes adopting new technologies a little bit more difficult than other industries?
So there's a number of things that are very unique about the restaurant industry. One is that this is a pennies business, right? The restaurant profit margins are thin to begin with. So, that should be a blessing, but it's also a curse for anyone who's coming into the restaurant market. For restaurants to invest money in a product that is unproven or doesn't have clear ROI, or in some cases, has this very fuzzy value prop, is going to have a hard time getting in and being sold. Two, the restaurant industry as a whole is every brand is a snowflake. So you have some large corporations who own some of their own restaurants or all of their own restaurants. If you have a corporation like Chipotle who owns all the restaurants, Starbucks who owns a lot of the restaurants, Whataburger who owns about 80% of their restaurants, the sale looks very different selling to somebody like that than selling to a McDonald's who has 13,000 restaurants, but only about 600 of them are corporately owned stores. So who you're selling to is important, and what the FDD they have with the franchisor and the franchisee dictates how you can sell to them. In many cases, technology needs to be approved by the corporate customer, but then sold to the franchisee. And the franchisee cares about different things than the corporate customer cares about. So typically, if you want to simplify it, the corporation cares about the top line sales. They get paid their royalties off of top line sales, so they care about driving that top line number. The franchisees care about that top line number for sure, but what they really care is the bottom line money number. What money am I making from the restaurant that's coming to me at the end of the day? So understanding that dynamic is very different than perhaps selling to retail. the restaurant industry as a whole too, you have to look at it in terms of the mindset is when they're paying for technology, and that their technology line has just exploded over time. So if you're coming into the restaurant industry and you're coming from Microsoft, for example, and you think, well, I can just get them, I can prove to them theoretically that I'm going to save them $1,000 a month, so they should want to pay $500 a month to me, and then they'd be happy with that $500.
Right.
Which, anyone outside of the restaurant industry will say, yeah, that would be a good deal. But the restaurateur is going to say, you want me to pay $500 a month for X that's an add-on to a system that I'm only paying $100 a month for, or $200 a month. No, I'm not going to do that. I can have my manager still do this, and they're salaried, so it doesn't matter if they're spending extra time to do the thing that your AI is going to do for me, and allegedly save me $1,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So, I think you got to be very thoughtful about the way you're approaching the sale, and you've got to be realistic about what it is like to sell into the restaurant industry. Here's the fourth thing. Every one of those technology products typically has a different buyer in the restaurant brands. So if you're talking about a full technology stack, POS is usually sold to the CTO. Back office is usually some operations people. Loyalty is usually the CMO. And then you're talking finance when you start talking about payments. So you've got different buyers in those as well, which makes it really interesting if you're trying to sell a full stack solution or a solution that covers a number of different areas. Mm-hmm. It's a wonderful world. Restaurant people are awesome people, but they're a little resistant to change. And so it becomes a very interesting dynamic. It's where I've spent my entire career in restaurants. And anyone who comes in and isn't thoughtful about this, or thinks they can sell to restaurants the way they would sell to the business down the road, is bound to have some hard lessons, I would say.
Absolutely. I think of, as you were just describing, restaurants oftentimes are resistant to change. I think I would agree with that based on my very brief learning of the industry and talking to folks within it. But then I also do see certain brands, which one of those is McDonald's, that has been ahead of the curve in some cases. Like, let's use the automated order taker, the drive-through voice AI as an example. They bought a company back in 2019 and were the pioneers of this technology, but then they most recently pulled the plug on that project. But then you have other brands like Taco Bell and Wendy's building it in-house with, I guess, the help of a couple of consulting companies and implementers and foundational model providers. But now they are the ones that are proving it out in-house. Then you have, on the other hand, you have other brands, larger, and some of them are kind of mid-sized, that are waiting to see the other brands prove it out. So yes. From your experience, when you see a new technology, maybe during the time when you were at McDonald's, what was McDonald's approach to deciding whether we want to either shop around and find a provider, build it in-house? In the case of Apprenti, they bought the company themselves and tried doing it in-house. What was McDonald's position around new technologies, and how did they come to adopt it?
It's very interesting because I've seen McDonald's adopt some really good technology and also invest some money in places that probably didn't pay off. I think McDonald's has always been a people company that sells burgers. What they did in the last 10 plus years has become a technology company that is also a people company that sells burgers. So they've been on the forefront. They bought their POS system and developed it in house. They bought a cousin of MPOS, I think it was, and then have spent millions and millions of dollars creating and updating what they call now new POS. Apprenti is a really good example. They also bought, at the same time they bought Apprenti, they bought a
Dynamic Yield, I believe.
Dynamic Yield, yeah.
Yeah, that was from MasterCard.
Yes. So I think the interesting part about Apprenti is then they sold it, and then they brought in IBM to work with them. and again pulled the plug on that, which was interesting because ultimately what they were trying to prove out is they would save labor by having an AI order taker and drive through. My view from the field is that ultimately the restaurants don't have a dedicated person taking orders and drive through except for their peak hours. So what they were really doing was replacing, or if they could have gotten to 98% accuracy, which they were struggling somewhere in the 80s, I believe. If they got to that 98, they could replace somebody. But since they didn't, they couldn't replace the person. So the real ROI, in my opinion, for something like that should have been focused on order accuracy and speed in the drive-through, not necessarily labor savings, which is a little harder to prove out, but certainly something that would have been better there. But to get back to your question, really was about, how was McDonald's looking at this? McDonald's is constantly assessing technologies that are out there. Sometimes they've been first to market, and sometimes they've been very slow to adopt. They actually had one of the last online ordering apps that came out, and when we were in the restaurants, we heard often that the story was, we don't want to be first, we want to be best. And they rolled out, and their app is one of the best ones that's out there now.
I would agree.
So I wish I could say they have a really strong philosophy in terms of being consistent. I think they have also adopted some things that didn't make sense. They put this radius table tent system into the restaurants. Right. You go get your order at the kiosk, Bluetooth enabled table tent that you take out, and the crew person then can see where that person is sitting. Problem is, most of their lobbies are 100 seats or less, and the crew people are just taking the tray of food out, never looking at the tablet and saying, okay, there's table 25 is over there, and I'm going to put it in. That didn't make a lot of sense to invest in, and probably didn't have as much ROI as they expected. It's interesting.
One thing that you said really reminded me of back at FS Tech last year. I went to this panel around buy versus build, and I was listening to there was, I think, one gentleman from Aspire Brands, but the rest of the panel were smaller chains. Maybe I think maybe Crystal was on there. Crystal is quite big, but most of them were under 100 locations. And most of the panel agreed that in the restaurant industry, it's for new technologies, it's more of a buying decision than there is a building decision. And then in the case of McDonald's, right, for example, correct me if I'm wrong, does that mean because they bought another POS provider and then kind of built the scaffolding around it to create their own solution, does that mean that PAR got unfortunately kicked out of McDonald's?
PAR has always been a hardware provider for McDonald's, not a software provider, right? So
Got it.
And that's a great point, because a lot of times people use the physical devices and the software interchangeably, and it's really two different things for the restaurants. So even when a restaurant is buying or building their own software, they need a hardware to put it on. They can buy PAR or NCR hardware or HP. There's lots of hardware providers out there, but PAR and NCR both have the ability to bundle that in with their own software.
That makes a lot of sense. Okay, so in that case, then the software element is where most of the brands want to have some customization. And then it does seem like then the decision is, first of all, how expensive is it going to be to work with a third-party vendor to customize everything for our use case? And then the question then becomes from the technology vendors, do I want to be essentially like a consultant for this one brand versus going and selling, across the industry? So I guess from your experience being, maybe at the startup stage, did you feel any pressure, or do you see pressure from technology providers from becoming like a sole consultant to one of these big brands versus going out and trying to capture like a wider TAM?
It's interesting. Everyone wants the wider TAM.
Right.
So going in, let's be clear, everyone who is an enterprise customer, and we can define enterprise however you want, to 5,500 stores, whatever the case may be. From a POS software side, it's a little bit like a CRM implementation, right? You can buy it out of the box, and you'll probably have to change some of your processes or procedures, or you can have custom development done, and then it costs a little bit more, and that's really what the POS vendors are going out and selling. Is there's not a lot of differentiation between POS products. It's become a very commoditized thing. So it's really about what can I integrate to? Am I willing to do the custom development that you want in order to get the sale? And then add the features in that give the workflows that the customers are used to in the restaurants. But every one of them faces the same problem of we want to sell our best in class POS product, but what we really want to do then is, also sell our back office product and sell our or payments product and our loyalty product. And cross sell is one of those things that all of the larger vendors in the enterprise space are trying to crack the nut at. Do I want to sell individual pieces or do I want to sell an all-in-one solution? And anyone that's in the restaurant space that's enterprise is not going to rip and replace every part of their tech stack at the same time.
I see.
Too hard. Think about it having heart surgery, brain surgery, at the same time. You're not going to do that. You're going to do it piece by piece. So you may get somebody who's coming in cycle that will want to purchase more than one product, but the likelihood is they'll focus on a POS deployment at enterprise, and then we'll look, and if we're unhappy with our back office software, then we'll look at changing the back office or changing loyalty. There's got to be a reason right now for them to change, and just because you're coming in and you've sold your POS product is not necessarily a reason for them to go purchase something else if they're happy with the product they're using.
That's excellent. And as you were mentioning, you mentioned coming into cycle, and it got me thinking, does the restaurant industry have different buying cycles than other industries? And then to that point, where do you see restaurants, let's just generalize here, where do you see restaurants aiming their targets at with new technologies? What are like the hottest things that people are looking at that might be considering for either this year or next year?
Well, that's interesting. So I would say that first, we have to recognize where we are in the economy and the restaurant industry right now. We face a couple of challenges in the restaurant industry. One, tariffs and the economy are shaky, I guess. The perception of the economy is shaky. We do know that disposable incomes are going down, that people are making different decisions with their dollars. So, there are headwinds in the restaurant industry. Doesn't mean that people are just going to stop going out to eat, but they may, instead of going out 4 times a month, they may go out 3 times a month. And that's going to have an effect, or, they're going to trade from going from Panera down to McDonald's. Not that I'm trying to disparage either one of them, but from a price point, McDonald's has focused more on the value strategy, and you're seeing some of the brands coming out with value strategies to maintain some of that foot traffic. What we do know is that most of the positive growth that has happened in the restaurant industry in the last couple of years has been from price increases, not from additional foot traffic. So what that has done is created an environment the restaurant brands are really looking at things and saying status quo is the safest thing I can do right now. So when we start talking about what is the buying cycle at this point, typically a brand will we've looked at it as far as POS, they'll look every 5 to 7 years to make sure that they've still got the right POS system. It may be the same with back office systems. Loyalty seems to be a little bit less sticky. And, if somebody out there has a better price point or a better solution for what a brand is trying to do, they would do that. Payments is transactional. If you can get a better price on payments, you're going to go just like that to get a better price, as long as it's not bundled with something else. So I think that if status quo is the easiest thing right now, what you're really going to do is see brands not change unless there's a real reason to do that. Or they have somebody come in, a new CTO come in, and they are fans of a particular POS brand, and they want to make that change. Then they'll do that. From a standpoint of feature functionality, POS back office, loyalty to a certain extent. There's a lot of parity in the marketplace right now. There's nothing new coming out of the major players. They can say, "Oh, we have AI right now," but there's limited cases where they've actually put AI, and it's usually around projections and ordering and some of the things that are taking place in the back office or scheduling. Where is investment going to happen? AI is the buzzword, right? All things AI, anything innovative that can help the restaurant make more money, make the restaurant manager's job easier, make the guest experience better, is going to be top of mind. And that innovation is happening in the startup companies that are coming into the marketplace. That's where it's really critical that those startup companies really hone in on what it looks like to sell into the restaurant industry and what the ROI really is. And they're going to have to come in and prove it out through case studies and pilots and working with some good pilot customers to prove out what they have is going to be good for their restaurant.
There was a lot there. What I got was a lot of brands right now are kind of in survive mode. And so instead of innovating in survive mode, they are kind of chasing the status quo and maybe looking internally for maybe some low hanging fruit that they could work on or accomplish towards to help them get more customers to come back. So repeat visits, maybe even cut down on their overall cost structure. And, as well, you're also mentioning that and this is where, sometimes as an innovator, someone that's in the technology space, I have a firm belief that when the going gets hard, you should probably be innovating, right? While everyone else is zigging, you should be zagging. And as a technology vendor as well, we start to hear of a lot of people are hesitant to try new solutions based on, one of the big ones is on price, right? Because restaurants are razor thin margin businesses, price is often one of the hard things to try to kind of justify the ROI and be able to sell it at a profitable venture. So if you were, you probably have seen tons and tons of price discussions and being in your seat at McDonald's and also with the startup as well. I'm sure that you probably have had a lot of pushback on price. Tell, for the vendors that are watching, technology vendors that are watching, how should we be approaching the price conversation? I'm sure you're going to say have the ROIs and the business case buttoned up and the case studies ready to go. But is there anything else that can kind of help cross that finish line?
Well, I think from a philosophical standpoint, right, a lot of technology vendors are coming with a solution in search of a problem. Come looking at what the problem that the customer is having and then apply a solution to that problem, right? Don't sell on feature functionality, sell on what it is going to solve for the restaurant. Perfect case right now, one area where technology is selling is kiosks in the state of California, right? Why is that happening? Because labor costs have gone up and everyone is trying to adopt kiosks to cut down on the labor. So, going in and selling your kiosk in feature functionality is not going to do you a lot of good in a competitive area where a kiosk is the same. Now you're talking about durability and some of these other things, but you got to be focused on the problem that it's going to solve. So, if you want to come in and talk about a voice AI product, which there seem to be 1,000 vendors all of a sudden of voice AI, right? Don't come in and talk about things that don't matter to the restaurant, and sell what you're solving and what the value of that solve is for the customer. And that's when customers are able to swallow price a little bit more than actually coming in and just doing the dog and pony show. Too many technology salespeople are more enamored with their product than they are with their customers. And if you get passionate about helping your customers solve this problem that's specific to them, I would love to see every technology salesperson go in and work in a restaurant just for a couple of hours, get an idea of what it's like to be in that. When you are in that space and you talk to the people who are actually the end users of that technology, your mind can be very enlightened in the products that you're bringing to the field. It's got to be easy for them to use. let's face it, the restaurants are not the highest aptitude for adopting new technology. So it's got to be easy for them to use. It's got to work. If it breaks when they're trying to do it, they will say, nope, I'm going to go back and do the old thing that I was doing because I knew that always worked. And then ultimately, it's got to be really a value to that employee. You want the employee to be the one to say to the operator, if you take this out of my restaurant, I'm quitting. That's where you win deals. You don't win deals by going in and necessarily selling at the lowest price. You win deals by listening to customers and solving problems that they have.
I love it. I love it. This has been a very enlightening conversation for the folks that are still listening, that let's just say are either selling into the restaurant industry or have a cool use case that they're considering to sell into the restaurant industry. How can they get in contact with you? And around bridging that gap that you were talking about, what do you think you can provide to these teams in order to help them get that first pilot or close that first enterprise deal?
So I think what I would call myself kind of the universal translator, having lived in the restaurant world, lived in the restaurant technology world, operations and deployments, and then having been in sales and sales account management, I understand and can translate and hopefully shorten the gap there between what is the technology that we're bringing to market and what is really the usable technology. I'm available to have any conversation. I love talking about technology. You can reach me at Todd at bridgepointops.com or ping me on LinkedIn. Love to talk with you about how I could help your company or your brand scale technology and really just make smart decisions, because my passion is not about the vendors. It's not about the operators. It's really about the restaurant employees who have to use it and the guests that are there. I think when we really honor our restaurant employees by giving them the best tools to do their jobs, everyone wins. The tech vendors win, the operators win, and the customers win. And that's what I want to do for people.
Amazing. Todd, thank you so much for joining us on this episode, sharing with us tons and tons of wisdom. I'm sure whoever's listening to this, if they just, take this episode and attribute a value to it, it's priceless. So I appreciate you coming on and thank you for the work that you've done in this industry, because I think we often hear from the operators that I talk to on the show, it's all about the employees. It's all about the employees. But oftentimes I'm not hearing that same sentiment or that same focus on the employees. When you're selling a technology, it's usually about the ROI. It's usually about some high level metric, but at the end of the day, the employees kind of build the business and they're the ones that are there day in and day out. So it needs to be intuitive and it needs to provide value. And the thing you said around, if it's painful to rip it out for the employees, then you built yourself a great product. So I love that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Do yourselves a favor and go work in a restaurant for a shift. Your customers will eat that up if you ask to go in and work side by side with your employees. You will learn a lot, and ultimately, when you put yourselves in your shoes, you're going to build better products.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Todd.
Hey, thanks, Danielle.